Hello and welcome to another episode of Daftarkhwan Fireside Chats. I'm your host, Rabi Malik, and today we have with us the Chief Product Officer at DAO PropTech, Abdullah Khan. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Just to kick things off, do you mind giving us a quick introduction both about yourself and about your organization?
DAO PropTech is a marketplace that connects investors with real estate developers. Essentially, what we're trying to do is solve for the problem of starting asset ownership by providing people with very flexible, futuristic real estate options that they could directly invest in. I work in DAO as the Chief Product Officer.
Awesome. So it's an exciting new role, I guess, and an exciting company as well. Can you tell me a little bit about the first role that you ever had after university or the first sort of job that you had?
Right out of undergrad, I worked in international development for 5 years, mainly with a German development agency in most and all parts of Pakistan. Later on, I worked with the UN Refugee Agency in parts of Pakistan and Afghanistan. Following those 5 years in very war-torn humanitarian operations, I went to the US, did my grad school in data analytics and public policy. Following that, did a year of consulting work in the US, came back to Pakistan, joined Careem for a year, heading operations. Following Careem, I was working for 3 years with a data science company based out of San Francisco, but working on real use cases in Pakistan.
What was it that drove you to sort of go back into education after more than sort of 5-6 years of professional work?
I mean, right out of undergrad, I wasn't very sure, so I took some time off working to get that clarity. And it was a very enriching experience now that I look back, that in the 5 years that I worked, I did get exposure of most of the things that the real world has to offer. So what I really wanted after those 5 years was to get a good academic grounding of the experience that I have. Data analytics was an ambitious new cycle that I really want to explore. So that's why having public policy and data analytics, using all the information that we have in this day and age, and using that for solving very complex problems. I mean, that is what the education was all about. And a very worthwhile. It was a difficult decision, to be honest, leaving a very stable paycheck life and going back to a student mode. But it was definitely worth it.
You mentioned a little bit about how you went from a more stable job into student life. How did you make the decision to go and join a startup now? Because I guess maybe in many ways that's a similar mindset shift.
I started off my career with the most gigantic bureaucracies that could possibly exist. I spent 18 to 20 months in the UN as an international bureaucrat. So starting it from there, what really mattered to me over time with my exposures was that it's difficult to change existing status quo, especially in bigger bureaucracies. If I want a very impactful life, startups are the engine to enable me for that. So Careem was my first experience in a very structured, grown, stable startup. Following that, I worked for another startup based out of the US. So this is already, I feel, at home turf with a startup.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Do you mind talking a little bit about how you then took that step from, let's say, a more established company into the startup world?
So from my time in the UN, I had a lot of work around refugees, mostly in Balochistan, and a lot of travel to Afghanistan. So once you've seen conflict areas and conflict regions operating, and once you actually live and work there, I think you don't get comfortable with it, but you get comfortable with dealing with chaos.
Got it.
So I think that has been my grounding for being very comfortable with chaos, and that my continuous stickiness with startups is the testimony of it.
And so that's I guess that's a skill set that you took to Careem and then now to DAO PropTech as well. Can you speak a little bit about some of the learnings you might have had at Careem? Is there anything in particular that might stand out that you learned there that you're now sort of applying at DAO PropTech?
Definitely. So Careem was an eye-opener for me for multiple reasons. For first, seeing an actual business in Pakistan, a digital business, thrive to that level was, it was second to none. When I was interviewing for Careem, they were telling me the numbers and I wouldn't believe them, right, till I saw them for myself. One thing which really stood out in Careem was the team and the culture. I mean, it was a cultural cult, I would say, at Careem. which was
in a good way, I hope.
In a really good way. The level of ownership that people showed at Careem, I mean, you wouldn't have to ask people to follow up with them. So the culture and the team and how it gelled the team towards that kind of a delivery. So it's a remarkable that how Careem was able to do that.
And how do you build a culture like that? Is there any tips that you have, any suggestions you might have for startup founders to sort of build that culture within their teams?
So that is the current thing I'm working at DAO as well, to try to somehow replicate it or absorb some parts of how Careem was operating. But more so, you see, I'm convinced that if you have the right amount of people, if you have the right values, and if you have the right team to go about it with all the chemistry, you can really do wonders. So Careem convinced me of that can actually happen. Now, how to do that again at DAO PropTech is a challenge that I'm looking into each day.
That sounds good, and I think this is a challenge that every startup founder will be tackling. And I guess the dream is to act as a career accelerator, right?
That's the
We've
idea.
seen this with Careem. We've seen this with a lot of the other successful tech companies in Pakistan. And that makes a lot of sense. Do you have any thoughts in terms of building a strong team? Just before this, we were talking a little bit about how the team at DAO PropTech has come together. Do you mind speaking about that?
For sure. So it's really funny that the team at DAO PropTech, we're all of the founders and the core team right now, we're all high school friends who were after A-levels, we were all dispersed, went about doing our own things. Avais went into technology sales with IBM and Oracle. Jawad, our founder, went into construction and real estate development and medical tech startups. Munib, one of our other friends, we were together in undergrad, so he went about 10, 12 years doing in the telcos and the financial sector. And I myself went on the technology track. So we all met up in 2018, 19. I was getting married, so the whole crowd of the school crowd was coming to attend. That's how we got connected again. And by that time, I mean, we all had very clear specialities in the work that we do. Real estate somehow stuck with all of us for different reasons. My reason for real estate, coming into the real estate sector, was very much driven by my personal experience of my father. That I saw a retired government army officer, in his 70s, losing half of his life wealth just because of a poor advice by someone who wasn't held accountable for it. So it really stood up to me when I was in the US, when I saw my dad's lifelong saving going into half. So when I met Jawad again, and Avais and Munib, so we kind of spoke about all of our bad experiences in the real estate sector and how much we all agreed on the common grounds that this sector also needs a disruption. It's a humongous sector. So, that was the core intent with really old friends that we started DAO PropTech.
That makes sense. And how has it been so far? You mentioned you joined in January. It's only been a few months, but how's the experience?
I mean, the experience is what really sums it is teamwork makes the dream work.
Yep.
DAO PropTech, I'd been contributing to DAO PropTech for a while. I only joined full time, but I remained involved in one way or the other. The experience is, there's lots of energy in the system. We have probably some of the best talented people that we're trying to get and the people that we already have. So it's going very exciting. I mean, it's how everyone thinks of their pinnacle of their professional work, that you get to work with some of the smartest people who get to be your friends as well. So it's a whole new chemistry that we experience at DAO PropTech every day.
That's awesome and very inspiring as well. In the short time that you've been with DAO full time, do you have any specific stories or learnings that you might want to share? Anything that was an interesting realization or something like this?
So there's a funny story about it. And the story is I'd left my previous employer and I'd informed them that I'm leaving my job and moving full time to DAO PropTech. And the last conversation with my manager in December, where I said, no, I really, really want to go. That same day, there was a press release in the newspapers warning the general public from the Securities and Exchange Commission, warning the general public about fraudulent schemes. and for some reasons, mistakenly now, our name was there as well. So, I always tell people that my start to DAO was a very turbulent one. That, the day I decided, here's my resignation, I'm going to DAO, that very day we got that public notice. But thankfully, it was a turbulent start. But since then till now, we've been able to work with the regulator. We have been able to get into a very healthy conversation where we explain them our business model and how we are not doing any of those things which are not in the purview of law.
That's very good to hear. Do you have any tips for people who are working in regulated industries? You've obviously opened up quite a strong dialogue with the regulator. If someone wants to work in fintech or something in the security space, what do you recommend that they do? How can they engage the regulator constructively?
So Rabi, in our experience, which has just been with the SCCP, in our experience, what has really worked well for us has been an open book policy with the regulator. I mean, we were kind of fearful of the regulator until we got engaged with them. And it was a very turbulent engagement, seeing your name in a press release. Yeah. But when we approached the regulator and started working and meeting with them, we found the scare was more uncalled for.
I have one last question for you, which is, do you have any advice for aspiring founders, aspiring entrepreneurs in Pakistan? If you had one piece of advice, what would that be?
I think what I would give an advice to people is that, make up for all the time that you need for building those skills, building that confidence, but then also get some form of boldness of taking some bold steps. For me, the bold step came thankfully from the support of Jawad and my colleagues at DAO, which really helped me take that step of from a job to self-employed status. So that's my advice to all the founders. Be confident and take that bold, calculated step.
Could you speak a little bit about why yourself and your team have decided to solve this specific problem at DAO PropTech?
Definitely. So Rabi, the common ground that we work at DAO PropTech is to actually create opportunities for people like ourselves, right? We've all been into corporate jobs or public sector jobs. But you see, any saving and all the hard work that goes into earning a livelihood, we believe it's not fair that all that money devalues because of quantitative reasoning, because of the reasons that are beyond a normal person, average person's control. So what really inspired us was to solve for these challenges that exist in the real estate market. More specifically, you see, we believe in a world and we desire and aspire for a world where you don't really have to wait till the age of 45, 50 to get your own home ownership. When you start earning in the 20s, that's when you should start earning and getting your own real estate investment sorted. You see, normal real estate, as the status quo happens, it's a huge loss of economic opportunity. There's a movement in the 2010s and 20s going on, which is called the FIRE movement. So we really believe, everyone in Pakistan under the age of 25, that's 50% of our population. All of that population need that financial freedom, right? They need to start their asset ownership as soon as possible and not wait for how real estate ownership works for our parents' generations and the generations before that. So I think what we really essence, to put it in a nutshell, we really exist to disrupt how people look at financial independence.
Thanks so much for sharing your vision for DAO PropTech. Thank you so much for joining us, Abdullah, and thank you, audience, for watching this. For other videos and other conversations like this, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and you can follow us on all social media.